So initially in my 20s, I had a 401k. I also had a life insurance policy because it had cash value. I wanted to set aside some money. And after about 10 years, the life insurance policy had no cash value. And the 401k, I'd actually put more money into it, and there was actually less in it than what I had initially started. So I was really unmotivated by the fact that my plan had been unfunded, or I'd put a lot of money into it and had gone nowhere. So I started looking for other options, things that were not tied to the stock market, because I saw what 401k had done for me. I knew that wasn't going to work. So I was looking at other investment vehicles. I talked to my insurance provider about my life insurance policy and realized it was never going to go anywhere based on the way it was set up. So I looked around and I found some information out about a 770 account and creating this infinite banking concept. So I was like, well, what is that? Because really looking at what my choices were. And that's when I met John. I would say interrogated him. I had a lot of questions. I've never heard of this before. How does this work? And we got started by looking at what my plan was. So I wanted something that was tax conscious, but also allowed me to retire or take time off, have some flexibility and liquidity in my money. And looking at the 770 account, I could actually take a life insurance policy and he could construct it in a way that allowed me to fully fund it, but be able to take policy loans from it, which is similar to a banking model where it's my own money, I've invested it, I can now take a policy loan against that. So that's really kind of how I met John and got things started. I initially started with one policy to see how it worked. And then I took a loan from myself to see how that worked. And it was super easy. I had my money within 3 days. It showed up in my bank account. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I funded 2 policies. I funded the first one, and the way John created it for me, he structured it so I knew how much I had that was liquid and what's going to be growing, and I'd check in with them on how it's growing. And then it would be just in February, I transitioned from working for a consulting firm to start my own consulting practice. And I had a book of contracts, but there's this challenge of how do you get finance, what's the cash flow process? And what I realized is that the policies that I created, that 770 account, allowed me to not just retire when I wanted to or take time off, it actually allowed me to finance myself. So I started my own consulting practice and was able to move straight into operating because I didn't have to go to a commercial bank and get financing. I could finance myself. So I immediately had that freedom to say, great, I can go float 120 days, starting up my own business using the accounts that I had created by working with John. So from there, I've now over $1 million in business and still operating as I want to. But now I'm looking at it from a business standpoint, and I pay my taxes on a quarterly basis as a business, not just an individual. So looking at that 770 account as a business owner and saying, well, if I take my taxes I'm going to pay eventually, fund it in a policy, I can now take a loan for myself, pay my taxes while it's still growing for me. So I've kind of invested in myself while still being tax conscious. So to me, it's not only a retirement plan, but allows me to grow my business, allows me to be tax conscious, and really kind of set myself up with my own banking system that doesn't require me to go get traditional financing.